to lead into that, though, we're just going to do a short bit of kind of review of factoring, even though I know we just were tested on factoring yesterday, but just so we're all on the same page. So if I was to give you 4x minus 12, this polynomial, and I asked you to factor it, what you have to do is find the greatest common factor between these two terms, 4x and 12, which your greatest common factor would be 4. So you divide each term by 4, and then you write it in factored form. So you have 4x minus 3. So I take 4x divided by 4, and then 12 divided by negative 12 divided by 4, I get negative 3. This is just a little review. For the next question, we're going to do the same thing. Find your GCF of 9 and 9x squared and 15. A common kind of trap some people fall into is just assuming that your smallest number is your greatest common factor. It's not. 9 divides 9 evenly, but 9 doesn't divide 15 evenly. So our greatest common factor isn't 9, but it's 3. Because the factors of 9 are 1, 3, and 9. The factors of 15 are 1, 3, 5, and 15. So our greatest common factor would be 3. So we divide each term by 3. So we have 3, then we have 3 x squared plus 5. Our division going down. Our last example, we have 3 terms. If we have 3 terms, we just have to find the greatest common factor between 3 terms instead of 2. So we try to find the greatest common factor of 2, 4, and 10, which is 2. And then since we have an x cubed, an x squared, and no x's, our greatest common factor is just 2. So we divide each term by 2. 2, 2, and 2. So we write it in factored form. This would be x to the third minus 2x squared plus 5. Is that a question or just a hand? Can you what? Sure. Leave your phone on my desk and then you can take it on the pod. So we're gonna factor by grouping now, which is what we use to factor when we have 4 terms. And here are steps that I laid out, with the goal being, when you're working through your homework, you're looking at these steps as well, so you know what's going on. So your first step, so it's called factor by grouping. You're going to group your first 2 terms together, then you're going to group your second 2 terms together, so your third and your fourth term. What you're going to do from that is you'll divide your greatest common factor out from both groups. When you do that, you do it correctly, you'll get 2 parentheses that match. The 2 parentheses that match are going to be what we call a factor. And then we're going to get another factor by taking the GCF, so there are 2 parentheses. So bring it back together. And then our end result will be our 2 factors multiplied together. So we're going to put these steps into action. I'll kind of talk through about which step I'm doing it as I do this first example problem. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 4x plus 8. So we're going to group these together. Grouping means grouping with parentheses. So I do parentheses, and you should do it too, around your first 2 terms and around your next 2 terms. And in each one of these parentheses, we're going to find the greatest common factor and divide by that. So the greatest common factor between x squared and 2x is just 1x. So we're dividing each of these by our GCF. The greatest common factor between 4x and 8 is 4. So we're dividing each by 4. What we do next is we do our division like we just did in those review problems. They're right in factored form, so I'm going to put my x in the front. Then I'm going to have parentheses and divide to get my stuff inside my parentheses. So x squared divided by x is just x. 2x divided by x is positive 2. And I do the same thing for my second parentheses. I have a plus 4. This plus is staying there from the beginning between our two terms. Factored out of 4. And then 4x divided by 4 is x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. All right, so now we can look. We have two terms that are identical, x plus 2 and x plus 2. This is what we would call a factor. What we do with this factor that matches, the 2 becomes 1. So we just write one pair of x plus 2. That's one of our factors. How we get our other factor is by grouping together our two GCFs, so our two things in red. So we're going to group up x and 4. So we'll write our parentheses as x plus 4. And then this is our final answer. And that's factoring by grouping. We group, then we factor each group. And we bring it back together. Almost group again, in a way. So this process takes just a little bit of getting used to. So we're going to do a few more examples. Let's do example B now. Your first step is always going to be to group your things together, so your parentheses. Group them together. And then we're dividing. Your greatest common factor between 3x squared and 6x is 3x. We can divide by a 3x here. The greatest common factor between 5 and 10 is 5. So we divide each side, each term, by 5. So we go through and we have 3x. We have our parentheses. This would be an x minus 2. Then our second parentheses, we'd have a plus 5 out in front. 5 is our GCF. And when we divide, again, we get something that matches. We take 5x divided by 5, that's x. We take 10 divided by 5, that's negative 2. Yeah, these two match. So those get grouped together to become one factor. So we get x minus 2. And then the second factor would be 3x plus 5. So there's your second factor. So again, if you have your phone out, it should be put away. First off. Thank you. Yeah. You sit right there now. Yeah. All right. Let's do, we're going to do 4 more examples in total, I think. We'll do these front two. There's some under that. Under the fan. So, first step, group your first two together, and then group your last two together. The greatest common factor between 2x squared and 5x is just going to be an x. Because 2 and 5, the greatest common factor is 1. We pull out the lowest degree term, which is just x. And then in our second parentheses, our greatest common factor between 4 and 10, or 4x and 10, is 2. So you're right, x, parentheses, 2x plus 5, plus, then our other GCF out in front, 2, Then we can check that it matches up. 4x divided by 2 is 2x. 10 divided by 5 is 2, so we have plus 5. So again, we have a pair that matches, and then we make another factor with our GCF. So you're right, 2x plus 5, and in parentheses, x plus 2. Final answer. Since these two terms are being multiplied together, it doesn't matter which order you write them in. You could write your x plus 2 term first, and then your 2x plus 5. But since in multiplication, order does not matter. If you think that you can do D on your own, go ahead and try it. Otherwise, I'll do it up on the board. But it's always good to try to do things on your own. You can only learn so much from just copying. A lot of it comes from sitting and processing it while you're doing it. So, I group my terms together. My greatest common factor between 7x squared and 21 is 7x. You can take a 7x out of both of these. And between 10 and 30, the factors of 10 are 1, 2, 5, and 10, like I said earlier. The factors of 30, we could say, are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, what did I miss? 15 and 30. So the greatest common factor is 10. So we divide 10 by each. 10 and 10. So when we divide, we have our GCF out in front. We have our first factored group, so x minus 3. And then I always think to myself, all right, if I'm doing this right, I know my pairs of parentheses are going to match. So when I divide the second one by 10, I should get x minus 3. So I factor out a 10. So we have plus 10. And then when we factor, this would be x minus 3. So there we go. Our final factored answer is x minus 3, 7x plus 10. That's what we would call factor by grouping. All of these examples had plus signs in the middle. In front of our third term, our third term was always a positive. If you flip to the back side, you can see in the middle, your third term has subtraction in front of it. So on the back here, we're going to have to pay attention because we kind of got a little hiccup when we have a subtraction sign. All right. We're going to start our process off the same, and when we have to change it, I'll let us know. So we're going to group. And when we have a subtraction symbol, we're going to group that into our second group. So I'm going to group these two together, and then I'm going to take the sign that's in front of this group. So I'm grouping it like this. You see in all the other examples on the first page, I wasn't grouping the plus sign with it. But now I'm purposely grouping this minus 6. So from here, we divide by our GCFs like we've been doing. This would be, our GCF would be x, and this would be x2. So we can write that out as x parentheses 3x minus 8, and we're good to go. This is where our process is going to change. We know that when we divide by our greatest common factor, we should get out 3x minus 8. Right? But if you look at 6 and 16, the greatest common factor is 2. So if we were to just go ahead and divide by 2, not thinking anything of it, we would have a plus 2 parentheses negative 3x plus 8. Well, our big thing is like we're looking for matching factors. These two factors do not match. This is a positive 3x. This is a negative 3x. That's a negative 8. That's a positive 8. So we have to change one thing. Instead of dividing by a positive 2, we have to factor out a negative 2. So we change this to a negative, this to a negative. And then we redo our work. All right, if we were to factor out a minus 2 then, well, this turns into a plus 3x, which is what we want. And this turns into a negative 8, which is what we want. Now our terms match. So I would add this little note somewhere on your sheet that if you have a negative in your middle, you need to divide by a negative greatest common factor, GCF. Because now our final answer, I'd even group it together. 3x minus 8, x minus 2. Final answer. We're going to do just the last problem there. It's just one more extra review when we have a negative in the middle. So we're going to factor by grouping. Group your first two terms together. And then group your next two terms together, but we're including the negative sign again. All right, with our first term. So the greatest common factor between x squared and 3x, between 1 and 3 is 1, between x squared and x is just x. We're dividing an x from both of these. The greatest common factor between 2 and 6 is 2. But since we have our negative here, we know we have to divide by a negative GCF. So we're dividing each by negative 2. And hopefully when we do that, our parentheses match together. And let's see if that happens. We have x, parentheses, this would be an x plus 3. So that's what we should be looking for our other parentheses to be, an x plus 3. So we factor out this negative 2. If we take negative 2x divided by negative 2, we just get out 1x. We take negative 6 divided by negative 2, we get out positive 3. So grouping them together to get our final answer, we have x plus 3, x minus 2. That's our final answer, and that's factoring by grouping.